Hello and welcome to the SETI Live. My name is Bettina Forget. I'm the director of the SETI Institute's Artist in Residence program. Today we will discuss exoplanetary poetry, an art science collaboration that imagines how language might emerge on alien words. How can molecules become metaphors? What does it mean to co-author with a non-human intelligence shaped by planetary science? And can poetry help us think differently about life beyond Earth? We'll explore these questions with our guests Daniela Brill Estrada, Bart Kuipers, and Julie-Michèle Morin. They are part of the SETI AIR program's Cosmic Consciousness Residency, which explores ideas around communication, consciousness, and intelligence through literature and poetry. And a heads up, we may also be joined by our Cosmic Consciousness Residency advisor, Gregory Betts. He's in Trinidad doing a performance, so if we're lucky, he'll be able to pop in later. Before we get going, I'd like to take a moment to welcome all our viewers who are joining us from around the world on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, X, and Twitch. Tell us in the comments where you're joining us from. All right, let me introduce our guests. And because we have three guests, I'll just be brief. Daniela Brill Estrada is an artist from Bogota, living and working in Vienna. Daniela's creative process is nourished by her interest in complexity sciences, origin of life research, aesthetics, and non-hierarchical structures of knowledge. Bart Kuipers is a hybrid writer and multimedia storyteller from the Netherlands who's living in Berlin. He is the unexpected product of a master's degree in computer science and an MFA in creative writing, and is interested in the intersection of language and technology. And Julie-Michèle Morin has written a thesis on robotics and theater at the Université de Montréal in Canada and the University of Antwerp in Belgium in French literature and intermediate theater departments. Julie-Michèle relies on techno-feminist approach to reflect on issues raised by the encounter between performing arts and scientific and technological cultures. Welcome to you all. Hi.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So you work together as a trio, but you live in lots of different countries. Though right now you're in the same place in Portugal. This is how we get you all in the, on one screen. But before we get into that, can you give us a short overview of exoplanetary poetry? Like, what is the project and what are the basic components of that process?
Yes. So exoplanetary poetry is a literary art project in which we try to co-create poetry with an alien being. Where do we get an alien being? We don't have one handy. So what we do is we simulate an alien intelligence by using AI. And we train that AI on data about the chemistry of atmospheres of exoplanets. And our artistic thesis is that by training an AI on this kind of data, we will get an AI that behaves and acts and writes like an alien being from the exoplanet from which we took the data. And the next step in the process is to translate this poetry that we write in English into chemistry again, so that we could potentially communicate this poetry to alien beings somewhere in the cosmos. Because it is our idea that we don't know anything about these worlds, apart from the fact that they have to have chemistry, because that is sort of acknowledged that chemistry is everywhere in the universe. Our thesis is that the alien beings on those worlds have to have some kind of way to interact with the chemistry around them. So they have to have some kind of senses to take that poetry in and process that. So we make the circle round. We start with chemistry and we end with chemistry, because the idea is that chemistry might be the only universal language we have in common with those alien beings.
All right. So this is, I love this idea of starting with chemistry as the common denominator for everything in the universe. And Daniela, the project is partly inspired by your interest in Sarah Walker's thoughts on assembly theory. Could you expand on that a bit more and how that connects to your project?
Yeah, I can. I've been thinking about where to start with this question because it has such a long, like a long past for me. But initially, I can tell you a bit like how I got to know Sarah Walker's theory, even though I don't think I can explain it completely like she would with her words. But the thing is that I did my master thesis partially in conversation with physicists at CERN, and I was working with both experimental and theoretical physicists, and I was working on the idea of the possible difference between the hydrogen atoms that they use, because they use hydrogen at CERN because it's the easiest one to break, to look inside. But the answers to that question that came from the physicists were mostly like, there is never a difference in hydrogen atoms. It's always the same. Like, it doesn't matter if it's part of a living process or if it's not, or if it's gas, or if it's just an atom. And if you want a question about life, you have to go to a biology department and not a physics department. And I kind of got upset by that because I had the feeling also as an artist, and I think Sarah Walker also says that many times, like this materialist perspective of the world. Like I want to find the reasons in the materials that I have. Like from the matter itself, what is the difference between living and non-living materials? And then I found Sarah Walker, and then it was just a perfect thing for me. Like, this is a physicist working on astrobiology, working on origin of life, and trying to define life beyond biology or beyond the systems that we know, beyond the shallow pond and or the deep trenches of the ocean, or but just as a physical process of the possibilities that chemistry allows in the world. And that I found super, first of all, artistic. I don't know if she's aware of how aesthetic her theory is for an artist. For me, it was just as if I was hearing poetry. It was just like, yeah, this is so artistic that I can understand it, because what she's basically proposing is figuring out a way of understanding how these many possibilities in which the material of the world, or the chemical, I mean, because now we are working with chemistry, can get together, like the pieces, how they can assemble each other. And she explores this threshold in which it becomes complex enough that you can say, yes, this has been created by life. So life as the most complex system capable of developing structures beyond what chemistry alone would be able to develop. And then when we were talking about this project, it was obvious for me that her theory fit pretty well together, because she's talking about the chemical space in planets, in different planets. And she's talking about life as a universal phenomenon. And we are talking about life as a universal phenomenon because we're talking about life or a body capable to perceive or even to be conscious and intelligent, which is also what the call was for, as a universal phenomenon, as a possibility inside the spectrum of possibilities of the universe. So it's just like, it was a very beautiful connection, like this geochemistry of a planet becoming the possible biochemistry of a planet. And this planet made it happen. Like, yeah, the planet made it, like the planet found a way to like overcome that threshold of living and non-living. So for me, it was pretty connected the whole time. And I don't know if this answers your question, but that was kind of like the jump, because also we are working with chemistry and we are working with the chemical elements within the atmosphere of certain exoplanets that are being researched by SETI. And what we want to know is playfully understand how, like, what chemical processes are going on in that specific planet, and how they assemble, basically, like the phenomena. Right now we're looking into more the chemical phenomena than the chemical reactions. So oxidation, what does that mean? And so this is also like, okay, this planet has a possibility for oxidation. What does that tell us about this assembly, or about this complexity of the different structures? And could there be life there that can understand what oxidation is, or that can perceive oxidation in their bodies like we can? Yeah, and that's how we are also connecting to her theory. I hope that
yeah, I love that approach. And for anyone who is interested in assembly theory, I'm a big fangirl also of Sarah Walker and her book, Life as No One Knows It. Reads like poetry, and it's for anyone interested in an origin of life. I think her work is a sort of paradigm shift in origin of life research. And I'm just so delighted that a group of artists like picks that up and runs with it, and that you're giving it your own spin. So exploring, like you said, playfully what communication and intelligence means, also connected to what is life and what is not alive. That, for SETI Institute is looking for alien life, understanding what life is in the first place. Yeah, it's a pretty fundamental research question.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I want to pose a question to Bart, because you're interested in alternate modes of poetry and creation and technology. You said in your proposal, you mentioned poetry. That's a tool for human AI poetry co-creation. So how are you using this in your project? Because when we're thinking of poetry, you have a completely different take on how you're handling it and how you're presenting it to the world.
Yeah, I mean, I think my fascination with the combination of poetry and technology is that it's sort of the furthest apart from each other that you can think about. Poetry is purely about evoking an emotion, and technology is about efficiency. And I find this combination very interesting, because there is an inherent tension between those two. And I think that is a tension that everybody also feels, especially over the last decades with the rise of technological applications, with the machines that surround us, on which we are more and more dependent, and the tension that brings with it, because we know that, and none of us really like that. And at the same time, it's happening, and we have to sort of mitigate this tension between the soft qualities of life and between these relentless machines of efficiency. And I think in that there's a lot to explore. Like I wrote, for example, code poetry, which is sort of the touch point between those two modes that seem worlds apart, because it both has syntax, it has a completely different purpose. But I think my interest is in sort of finding a way to come to terms with the fact that we need technology, that we use it every day, and that it has become an integral part of us. And at the same time, not to lose these softer qualities. And I think on that boundary, there's a lot to see. And in this project, I named the tool Poetry, but it has evolved into our AI we call lovingly Jupi now. And our AI is also an example of a machine that is not a relentless, efficient machine. Our AI is trained on poetry on the one side. It is also trained on papers and scientific texts, like the ones from Sarah Walker, in which we did find a lot of very poetic words and phrases that we used to train the AI with also. But it's a very imperfect machine, and I think that is a very important aspect of the AI that we're using. And I was listening to a podcast the other day, and a poet was complaining that AI is now taking away the only fun part of writing, which is the creation of words and stringing the words together. All the other things in writing, the networking, the dealing with editors, is all a pain in the ass. The only fun thing is when you're sitting there and you have the power to create, and AI is taking even that away from us. So it is very explicitly not our idea to train an AI to do the job for us, but it's very much about co-creation. That was the wordplay of poetry in the first iteration. And to not have the AI do the fun part for us, but we work with it. And our AI is weird and strange and gives you turns of phrases or out of context words that you would never have thought of that suddenly give you a different turn or a different form of inspiration. And sometimes there is a phrase in it that you think, yes, this is so weird, this fits perfectly. So the poetry jumps around like that, but it's very explicitly still written by us, inspired by the AI. And I think, yeah, in terms of language creation and writing, I think that is a very important aspect for me.
Very cool. I love. Yeah, that's great. No, because we're all talking about AI and how best to use it, especially as it encroaches on the creative field, and you found a way to just handle it in your own unique way. So before I continue, I want to just take a break to say hello to everyone who's dialed in to us. We have a very international audience right now. So hello to Jacksonville, North Carolina, the Nordics, Dubai, Patagonia, Argentina. Somebody's watching us from Belgrade in Serbia, from Scotland, lots of Californians, from LA, Merseyside in England. Also, we have New York. And I want to sort of shout out to, hang on, I found it, I just saw it, and it's been highlighted as well, Salve de Mercy Island, Washington, and Vancouver. Yes, that's Ordo Fraterna. I'm going to mess up your name because you wrote it all in one. Bonacci, thank you for $50. We are a nonprofit, and we always are delighted when our viewers support us, and it really means a lot. So thank you so much. Thumbs up. You're fantastic. Cool. So I want to continue. I have a question for Julie-Michèle. So how does your research and creative work in you're doing dramaturgy and robotics, which is a really unique combination. And there is a performative aspect also to exoplanetary poetry. You're creating poetry, but there's also going to be a performance. And I think that's also sort of related to why you're in Lisbon right now. So can you tell us more about that?
Exactly, yes. Right now we're working on the, let's say, performance aspect of the project. We'll present a first iteration of a short performance in less than 2 weeks. So we're working on staging some live chemistry to translate the poetry we've been working on. It's true, it's a weird mixture to work in in performance, theater, robotics. But I'm mainly interested in like staging machines or robots, or I would say at large, like presence that are not human in a space that is traditionally reserved for humans, because I feel it really forces us to redefine our expectations around like what does it mean to be alive? What is performative? What is spectacular? So I really love playing with those, to just kind of eject the human presence out of the performance space. Because I also think it calls into question what is worthy of our attention. And my interest in staging those technologies and machine lie very precisely in the other modes of attention that they push us to develop. As artists, but also as audience members, because it forces us to kind of re-articulate how do we watch these entities on stage, how their behaviors that we're not used to necessarily make us feel, and how this kind of generate a new set of sensation. And I'm not so interested in like projecting human empathy on those objects, but I'm rather interested in like developing an honest connection to their objecthood, I would say. And I think that the stage is like a really precious space to work on this different type of relation and modes of attention. Well, that is what I experience in my own practice. I'm not saying it for everybody, but and for me, this is this kind of shift in the way we give some attention to things that are not necessarily exclusively human on stage. Is a shift that is like as much ethical and political that it is aesthetic, because I do feel that when we begin to like care for something, we begin also to feel responsible for it. And I feel that responsibility opens easily into like kindness or protection or generosity. And I believe that we need to extend that kind of care more broadly to humans, to non-humans, to technological systems, or even to aliens. That's kind of what we're attempting to do right here. And I feel that, yeah, it becomes possible to imagine, modes of interaction that are articulated to, within solidarity and not within domination. And that's also what we're trying to do with the AI, as Bart mentioned, like the way we curated the data sets with care, with a craft that is really meticulous, filled with tenderness, because it's also trained on our own poetry that we wrote while reading Sarah Walker or many other like astrobiologists' work. So I think that, yeah, this care and attention that you can implement also in technology is very important within, I would say, my practice and ours. I would extend that to the three of us. And yeah, so I'd say that working with robots and machines really taught me to pay attention to very small things, delay, repetition, slight misalignment, and to kind of be playful with those and to be curious about those. And what I carry from that previous work within this collaborative work is mainly this practice of listening, and to listen to what is not necessarily understood as spectacular. And like we feel that there's already like some really intense and immense drama happening at the molecular level. and so, exactly. So we want to take a moment to slow down, to notice it, to listen to it. And yeah, so we mainly try to listen to this drama, and we feel that maybe that if we listen enough, maybe at some point we will be able to talk chemistry, as we like to say. That the first conversation that happened when life was created didn't happen in English. For sure. It was,
exactly.
I
love how you just take this broader view on what communication is, right? That there's so much like chemistry is taking chemistry as communication. She want to take a short pause. We got a really interesting question from our audience from 28S. Bart, can you give us an example of a poetry message and explain what you hope to achieve with it?
Interesting.
That's a very, and Gregory is here. Hi. Hello to Trinidad.
Hi there.
Hi.
Hi there. Just checking in from Trinidad here. It's very festive here.
Yeah, it looks fantastic.
It looks very
So
festive.
just ask Bart a question directly from the audience. So Bart, you have the floor.
It's a great question, because of course there is also the question, why would you want to communicate in poetry, right? Why, if you need extraterrestrials, why would you want to give the poetry instead of just a straight hi, how are you? And I think part of why we chose poetry as a medium of communication is also because poetry enters you through different registers, right? It's not a one-on-one message that you're conveying, but you're conveying a lot of things between the lines, and you're conveying a lot of emotions and feelings that are undescribable, that language cannot normally contain. So I think we're trying to, as we are making this leap ahead in communication with aliens, we're also trying to make a leap ahead in communication and try to really embrace the idea of different ways of sensing and what that can do for our way of communication, because communication is always flawed in our systems, and maybe poetry is a more perfect way to communicate. An example of a poetry message is a difficult one. I mean, we wrote some poems that we would be happy to recite, but I don't know if we have the time for that. But I hope this at least ballpark answers the question.
So what I propose is that we'll do another SETI Live with you, where because we're talking to you mid-project. You started your creative cycle. You've worked with UP, started to do poetry. You're in Portugal right now. Part of your research creation. And then when you're done, we'll get you back, and we want to hear poetry, and we want to see chemistry in action.
Good deal.
Gregory, since you're here, so I want to just sort of repeat that Gregory Betts is our advisor for the Cosmic Consciousness Residency. And he himself is a scholar and an experimental poet, and we are delighted to have him as part of the SETI AIR program. So, Gregory, do you have any questions for our artists?
I have lots of questions, but I'd love to start with the idea that what we're just talking about right there, which is about the idea of poetry and what poetry is and what it does. But I'm also really interested to think about your experience with this project and how it might have changed or shaped your thinking about poetry, and what using the idea of an off-planet poetry, what that permits you, is what you've gained from that as writers. That you might not have had access to if you were stuck here on Earth with us, Earthlings.
May I?
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Since as we said that the poems that we're trying to generate cannot be symbolic, they need to be performed, because it's the only way that they could be sensed. Because sensing and communication are you cannot take them apart in this context, because the only way an alien could read that poem is through his senses. So the only way we can communicate is by performing a poem. So this tremendously changed my vision of poetry, because it needs to be an action. Even if I start or play with words, the poem will always be something that is performed chemically in this space. So to think about writing in terms of actions that I need to realize in the space, so the poem materialized through matter, that is really a way that I'm not used to work with poetry. So that was a big shift for me. Is does that make sense for you?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Because it needs to be experienced. So it's far away from the traditional modes of intimacy that you have, let's say, with a text on a paper.
And of course, you don't know for which senses you are also exactly performing this, because it might be that you have a being who is very sensitive to changes in pH value, for example, right? And so if that is a part of your poem and of your chemical performance, that could be something that an alien suddenly responds to, which you may not even have intended that way. So to think about other ways of sensing and other modes of communicating is an integral part of the experiment.
Yeah. But I think also that poetry allows for this complexity in language. You don't even need to have a message that you want to give them. The message does not need to be hey, we are this planet or in this place. I don't know, like we are animals, but the message is the chemical process itself. Like what we are trying to communicate could be also like the question if we are sensing the same thing through this chemical process. And a chemical language also allows you to use like different rhythms and to put silences in parts to just kind of ignore some words. It allows you to go faster or slower or to do something really short to say a lot of things. So this is also something that we are not I don't want to say that using, but it is like a integration of these like structures of language that can be chaotic and that can be different and that can be perceivable even if you don't understand the language. As easy as if you hear a poem, we talked a lot about this, like if you hear a poem in Sufi recited in the original language, you should be able to perceive it beyond the cognitive process of understanding the words that are being said. And this is very beautiful because we don't even have the words that we want to say yet. Yeah, we are being playful with words, with Jupi, with the AI, and we are writing poems in English, even though English is not any one of our languages. You know, it's like we are far from English, but that also gives it like this error flavor that is necessary to also imagine other types of life and imagine other types of evolutions of matter into something alive.
And I think also it's still a work in progress. We're in residency right now, but just the method that we're trying to experiment with right now is like doing some chemical experiment, trying to take down some notes to write some poetry. So let's say we write about oxidation. So we try some things out, we then write, then we go play with Jupi, the AI, and then we make extra research on oxidation on this exoplanet or this exoplanet. Then we kind of have a poem that we would like to stage, and we kind of gather all of the visual information we did try out with the oxidation experiments, and we try to stage back a poem to those exoplanets through the same language. So this is kind of the loop we're going to through. Yeah, we could say stuck in also, but that we're going through to kind of talk back in chemistry, as we mentioned.
Yeah.
Is that what you're doing in Portugal right now? Tell us a bit more about where you are and what you're up to.
Yes.
Could we also maybe put the picture of the lab? I think we've shared it in
Yes.
Maybe that would be, if you
That's
don't
in the
mind.
background.
There's a slide of
yes.
This is our lab.
Thank you.
Right now we are in this beautiful residency space called Cultivamos Cultura. And we've been connected to Cultivamos Cultura now we started the residency here last year in October. And it was like the one place where we could just come together and where we have a very close friendship to Marta, and shout out to Marta de Meneses, who also invited us to be here. And she has this beautiful old 100-year-old barn in the south, mid-south of Portugal, in São Luís. And in the barn, she has this DIY bio-art lab, which is the background of what you're seeing. And we asked her if we could turn it for our residency into this chemistry lab. So we are doing chemistry with even materials that we don't really understand yet, and that could be, we are trying not to go dangerous at all. But what we are discovering now is like this idea of the looking at the phenomenon that is going on in the experiment. And do you want to say something else about Cultivamos Cultura or the residency?
I think what we're trying to do is find a way to stage these poems. So we are really experimenting from two sides. We're writing poetry and we see how would you stage that, and we're doing chemical experiments and we're writing about that to see if this tells us anything other than that it's just a fluid in a beaker. So I think we're exploring the potential of this translation between language and chemistry. And we already found some very interesting sort of parallels and emotional experiences that you get through just looking very closely at a chemical reaction and seeing sort of today we did an experiment where we could see the process happening in front of our eyes, but like only in very close up. So it's about details. In that sense, it is pure poetry because it's very much in the details and it's very much in the construction and in the structure of those chemical components and how they react with each other, like the words in a good poem react with each other. So
this is a fantastic collaboration between, like, AI, chemistry, poetry, arts, and aliens. I feel like what we've done today is more like of a teaser of what is going to happen, once you finish the project. And I can't wait to get you guys back for a performance, a reading of the poetry, and sort of, like the final stage, the final phase of your creative process. And it's been like really phenomenal to like work with you and getting us away from this anthropocentric point of view of what poetry is. And that you've really taken that lens of like, what if an alien, doesn't have eyes, doesn't do speech? You just, like, you can smell the poetry, or you can, stick your feet in and just like feel it. Or this is why we have artists at the SETI Institute, exactly for this kind of thing. So we run a little over time. Gregory, I'm so glad that you could join us. So I would like to take this opportunity to remind everyone who is watching us that the SETI Institute is a nonprofit organization, and it's due to contributions from viewers like you that these SETI Live events are possible. If you would like to support us, please consider going to SETI.org and hit donate. Thank you all for this wonderful chat. I would like also to thank Beth, who is busy behind the scenes to run our StreamYard live stream. If you would like to find out more about the SETI Institute's Artist in Residence program, please visit SETI.org and then there's /AIR. And don't forget to sign up for newsletters if you want to stay up to date with the latest news and upcoming exhibitions and performances and artists from our program. So thank you so much, Daniela, Bart, Julie-Michèle, and Gregory for this wonderful talk. And I will see everybody else at the next SETI Live.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.